Welcome to the Global Current, where Seton Hall's diplomacy students give you a fresh look at what's going on in the world. I'm Alicia Sharabali. This week around the globe, the 68th session of the United Nations General Assembly, the Clinton Global Initiative's annual meeting, turmoil in Greece over a neo-Nazi attack, technology in Estonia, and the developments on the new president in Iran. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. And now, staffer Daniel Garay covers highlights of the 68th session of the United Nations General Assembly.
This week was a very important one in regards to the future of international relations. It marked the 68th session of the United Nations General Assembly, fondly known as UNGA. The first day of the session was time for heads of state to check in with the world. Highlights were speeches from the new Iranian president, Hassan Rouhani, and the President of the United States, Barack Obama. On Tuesday, President Obama had much to cover in his speech to the UN delegates from all over the world. First, he spoke about the closing of the war in Afghanistan and the changes to how the U.S. will carry out its military operations. He gave the examples of closing Guantanamo and changes to the United States' controversial drone program. The president also did not hesitate to talk about Syria. He reinforced the UN's recent report when he brought up how the chemical weapons attack on August 21st was indeed carried out by the Assad regime.
With respect to Syria, we believe that as a starting point, the international community must enforce the ban on chemical weapons.
The president also stated that if the UN couldn't come up with a plan of action against Assad, it would be a, quote, insult to human reason and to the legitimacy of this institution to suggest that any other regime carried out this attack, end quote. In the case of Syria's chemical weapons stockpile, the president believes that if the Security Council cannot pass a resolution to make Assad keep to his commitments, then the UN is incapable of enforcing international law. He also admitted that U.S. military action would not achieve a lasting peace, nor would it determine who will lead Syria. But at the same token, Assad has no legitimacy to lead the country again. To provide help to Syrians desperate to survive, the president announced an additional $340 million of aid on top of what is already being sent. The president also pointed out the double standard used in current dialogue. The U.S. is criticized for meddling in the affairs of the Middle Eastern countries, but when it comes to Syria, the U.S. is criticized for a lack of action, then that there is no care for the suffering of Muslim peoples. Moving on from the Syrian crisis, the president talked about Iran. He believes that the relations between the U.S. and Iran can't be fixed overnight because of deep-rooted suspicions, but he believed that their relationship can become one of mutual interests and mutual respect. President Obama has made it clear that the U.S. wants to solve the dispute over the Iranian nuclear program peacefully. President Obama also responded to Vladimir Putin's attack on American exceptionalism.
Some may disagree, but I believe America is exceptional, in part because we have shown a willingness through the sacrifice of blood and treasure to stand up not only for our own narrow self-interest, but for the interests of all.
The new Iranian president addressed the General Assembly. In his speech, the moderate cleric from the Islamic Republic said that Iran seeks to resolve problems, not to create them. Rouhani, who is drastically different from his predecessor, has tried to make amends with Israel and the world by acknowledging the Holocaust and declaring that Iran would not seek to obtain nuclear weapons. Although Iran is changing, it is very difficult to get anything done without the support of the supreme leader, and that the country has been hit hard by economic sanctions. President Rouhani and President Obama have made their points. Time will tell if the U.S. and Iran, along with the rest of the world, can get along in this global age. This is Daniel Garay for the Global Current.
During the Clinton Global Initiative's annual meeting, Bill Clinton committed to bolster the Rockefeller Foundation's 100 Resilient Cities Centennial Challenge. Anthony DeFlorio tells us more.
During the opening plenary of the 2013 Clinton Global Initiative, or CGI, annual meeting, former President Bill Clinton announced a global commitment to action to the 100 Resilient Cities Centennial Challenge. In response to the dual threat of increased global climate change and urbanization, the Rockefeller Foundation, along with Swiss Re, Palantir, the World Bank, the American Institute of Architects, and Architecture for Humanity, will support at least 100 cities across the world in preparing for natural disasters and stresses on infrastructure as a result of ever-increasing population growth. According to Architecture for Humanity, by 2050, 75% of the world's population will live in cities. Shocks and stresses, whether caused by extreme weather related to climate change, seismic events, or terrorism, affect cities on a larger scale due to population density, often with tragic results. But through proactive planning, foresight, and better investment, cities can mitigate these impacts. The 100 Resilient Cities commitment partners see building urban resilience as an imperative of the 21st century. It is our deep conviction that we should be preparing for disasters before they happen, rather than responding after the fact, said Martin Parker, Chairman Global Partnerships, Swiss Re. This not only saves lives, reduces human suffering, and protects property, it also helps to speed up recovery and lessen the impact on public and private budgets, which is the essence of resilience. Former President Clinton, in announcing the commitment Tuesday morning, added that effective resilience plans for our world cities would require changes on multiple levels of society.
Every 5 days, 1 million people move from rural to urban areas. Cities around the world are struggling to confront the interrelated challenges of urbanization, globalization, and climate change. As natural and man-made shocks to continue to intensify in both size and frequency, they must build for resilience. The need to do that has never been more clear.
Supported through a $100 million pledge to build urban resilience from the Rockefeller Foundation, the 100 Resilient Cities Network will grow to include at least 100 cities from around the world. 100 Resilient Cities will select the first round of 20 cities to join the network following the challenge process upon the recommendations of a panel of esteemed judges. Cities from around the world were invited to apply by the Rockefeller Foundation. To date, more than 500 cities have participated in the application process. Selected first-round cities will be announced on December 3, 2013, at the Rockefeller Foundation's Annual Innovation Forum. Although still in its nascent form, this concept of disaster-proof urban planning has increasingly become an imperative for cities on the coastal United States, as well as around the world. From the increased ravaging of the United States' southeastern states by yearly hurricanes and tornadoes, to the earthquakes, tsunamis, and typhoons plaguing most of South and Southeast Asia, this newfound task force on building global city resilience will utilize the expertise of engineers, architects, software designers, meteorologists, and government officials. This has been Laura Toledo for Anthony DeFlorio for The Global Current.
James Janos reports on the upheaval in Greece over the brutal murder of a musician by a neo-Nazi party.
In the last week, turmoil has erupted in Greece after the brutal murder of anti-fascist hip-hop artist Pavlos Fysis. Fysis, 34, who went by the stage name of Killa P, was allegedly stabbed to death by members of Greece's ultra-conservative neo-Nazi party, Golden Dawn. The brutal murder has significantly hurt the reputation of the far-right Golden Dawn party after it gained considerable public support. Presently, the party holds 18 seats in Greece's 300-seat parliament. The Golden Dawn has denied the attack was coordinated by top party officials. Greece police and government officials are monitoring the party, pulling phone records of the neo-Nazi group, and raiding their offices in the cities of Thessaloniki, Patras, and on the island of Crete. According to judicial officials, there's enough incriminating evidence on top Golden Dawn party leaders and deputies in connection to the Fysis murder and to detain upper echelon members. Since the murder of Fysis, Golden Dawn has seen a sharp decline in public support.
The situation in Greece is very worrying with the growing far right and the fascists from Golden Dawn, and we're very scared and worried about the situation in Europe as a whole, where you see that the crisis brings more and more people to the right and to despair that is channeled through austerity.
With the rise of Golden Dawn and the way things are going in Greece, we expected something like this to happen. I hope this is the end. The whole political and economic situation is a nightmare, and I just want it to end.
In a poll conducted by ALCO on behalf of a Greek website, newsit.com, the ultra-conservative group's approval rating has declined by 4% since the musician's murder. Since austerity measures came into effect in 2009, the Golden Dawn has gained a considerable amount of public support by protesting austerity measures imposed by the IMF and European Central Bank and calling for a nationalist Greek movement. On Wednesday afternoon in Athens, the biggest rally and march was held in protest of the Phesis murder. Protesters told the BBC of their displeasure with the murder. Thousands of protesters marched towards the Golden Dawn headquarters, initially in a peaceful manner. Police later had to use tear gas after some protesters started lighting garbage cans on fire and began throwing rocks at the neo-Nazi group's headquarters. This is James Janos for the Global Current.
If you're in the Seton Hall area, join the Students for Liberty as they host a candle vigil for the victims of the mall shooting that recently took place in Nairobi, Kenya. This vigil will take place at 7:30 p.m. on the seal in the middle of the campus. Stop by to stand together to mourn the loss of innocent lives in a tragic event and show your support. Moving on to analysis, staffer Amanda Noon discusses the importance of technology in Estonia, the digital state.
From health records saved in the cloud to the fastest internet speeds in the world, technology has had a strong presence in Estonia. However, it wasn't always this way. After the Baltic state declared independence from the collapsing Soviet Union in 1991, the nation initially struggled to build a digital infrastructure. Less than half of the population had access to a telephone line. A year later, Martelar, the nation's first prime minister, sought to change this by introducing a series of reforms, including a flat income tax and promoting free trade. In 2000, Estonia declared internet access to be a basic human right, and within a few years, free Wi-Fi and e-government became a nationwide success. Citizens are now able to vote online, and the government has introduced an educational initiative where children as young as 5 years old have learned how to code. Over 14,000 new companies were registered in 2011 alone, and Tallinn, the capital city, is home to over 150 tech companies. The path to a digital state, however, has not been smooth. Just as there has been an increase of government presence on the internet, there have also been a steady increase of cybercrimes committed against both government and non-government entities. In 2007, the Estonian government made the decision to relocate a Soviet-era World War II memorial. As a result, Estonia's ethnic minority began to riot. It was during this time that cyber attacks were unleashed, causing government and banking websites to go down. The attacks had a severe negative impact on Estonia's internet and caused major disruptions to the country in a matter of hours. Because of the attacks, citizens were unable to access bank accounts, and the government had to temporarily deactivate their domain to mitigate the cyber damage. The links were later linked to a pro-Kremlin group in Russia. However, what didn't disconnect them made them stronger. As a result of the attacks, the country started to focus more on cybersecurity measures, both internally and internationally. Estonia became the home of NATO's Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence, as well as a leader in the European Union on cyber attacks and security. Estonia's attitude in becoming a leader in e-government has been enhanced by its president. Although President Ilves does not have as many roles in the Constitution as the Prime Minister does, he acts as the highest representative of the state. His role in e-government has involved attending international conferences, giving speeches at Columbia University, and having an interview with BuzzFeed, among others. However, he is most well known for his active Twitter account. He tweets on a wide range of issues, from Estonia's role in NATO and the EU to the role of cybersecurity in post-Soviet states. He has continued to speak out on the role of technology and how global citizens can become more active in preventing cybercrime. Although it had a slow start in technological development, Estonia has now become a role model in e-governance and supporting local businesses, especially tech industries. Because its leaders were proactive in establishing and promoting Estonia's capabilities, the state has been able to develop a reputation for tech savviness, which has helped to support its economy as well as encouraging international investment. Most importantly, Estonia has been able to become a leader in promoting and supporting civil and human rights on the World Wide Web. This has been Amanda Noon for the Global Current.
Jacob Larsen discusses Iran's change in direction at this year's UN General Assembly.
This week, world leaders attended the United Nations General Assembly in New York, and as always, hot-button issues got even hotter. A key issue is Iran's nuclear program. This was also the case last year, when Benjamin Netanyahu presented delegates with a rather confusing bomb chart to underscore his plea to stop Iran's nuclear program. This year, newly elected Iranian President Rouhani brought the issue to the forefront by assuring the world in an interview with the NBC that, quote, under no circumstances would we seek any weapons of mass destruction, including nuclear weapons, nor will we ever. This statement is given further credibility by the fact that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has said that nuclear weapons development would not be consistent with Islamic values. Rouhani has also hinted willingness to negotiate a nuclear deal with the US, showing a warming attitude towards possibly ending their pursuit of enriched uranium. But with all this optimism, one question remains. How much bargaining room does Rouhani really have? Even though he claims to have full authority to negotiate the deal, the fact remains that the final decision lies with the Ayatollah. Even if Rouhani presents a great rhetorical shift from his predecessor, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, there is no certainty that the talk of compromise will be backed by action. It is no surprise, then, that the White House has been quite cautious in determining how to respond to Rouhani. The importance of the issue to the US and the careful reception of the message was underscored by President Obama this Tuesday when he spoke to the UN General Assembly. The president elaborated on the difficulty of cooperation between Iran and the US, but encouraged mutual cooperation. What the future brings will be hard to tell. While there was the potential for an informal meeting between the two leaders, plans fell through, with one White House official saying the meeting proved to be too complicated. This might suggest that the road to a nuclear deal between the US and Iran will be complicated by domestic forces in Iran, some of whom are unwilling to negotiate a deal with the US. However, I believe it's a sign of peace and progress that Iran no longer has a president that uses his annual UN address to stir up conflict by, for example, denying the Holocaust. Instead, President Rouhani sought to demonstrate the willingness to cooperate with the international community. Even if Rouhani's message continues to be received with caution, he represents a much less confrontational perspective than his predecessor, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. This is Jacob Larsen for The Global Current.
And finally, Laura Toledo chats with Dr. Andrea Bartoli, incoming Dean of the Diplomacy School at Seton Hall University.
So joining us today is brand new Dean Andrea Bartoli, the Dean of the Seton Hall School of Diplomacy, and he'll be here to discuss with us how he got into the international relations field and industry and his change over to academia.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So, Dean Bartoli, what sparked your interest in the international relations field, particularly your specialty of international conflict resolution?
It's a personal story, as often happen. Journeys of life, lead us to different outcomes. I'm part of a Catholic community, a lay movement called Community of Sant'Egidio that started in Rome in 1968. And with this community, we had some interesting connection in Rome with people from all over the world.
Wonderful. And now, in your introductory speech to the student body, you mentioned a new organization you were associated with, GAMA, the Globalization Against Mass Atrocities. Now, I couldn't find too much information on it. Is this because it's fairly new? I think you mentioned you were one of the founding members.
Well, I'm not really a founding member. GAMA is not even an organization in a way. I think probably if I characterize GAMA that way, I made a mistake. It's definitely not the GAMAC acronym stands for Global Action Against Mass Atrocity Crime. This is a very, 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 very recent development of 6 countries, Argentina, Australia, Costa Rica, Denmark, Tanzania, and Switzerland, that came together to craft an agreement on the next steps of how genocide prevention and responsibility to protect could be operationalized at the state level. And then this is a climax of a long process that started long ago, clearly with the approval of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in 1948, in December 1948, but continued with several steps, including the conference in Stockholm in 2004 and the establishment of the special advisor by Kofi Annan that was dedicated to genocide prevention first, and then with Ban Ki-moon, the expression of the special advisor on the responsibility to protect. And the change in perception on what is the state responsibility in this field, it has changed dramatically in the last 10 years, and these states have taken the lead in moving the debate further, the action further. And so there will be a meeting in Costa Rica in March that will actually launch the GAMAC real work. At the moment, we are simply working to prepare the actual launching of the initiative. So it's not really an organization; it's more an initiative, a coalition, an action, a collaborative effort.
All right, that sounds wonderful. And what are your activities with the initiative?
Well, I've been behind this idea for a long time. I've been very active in genocide prevention for quite some time. I suggested doing some training for governmental officials as a way to engage states. I started doing that 10 years ago after Stockholm. I suggested that at Stockholm, and then both I did this with the Auschwitz Institute for Peace and Reconciliation, and then with the Engaging Government on Genocide Prevention. And then there were some regional experiences with the International Conference on the Great Lake region in Africa, and regional experiences that were promoted by the government of Argentina, Switzerland, and Tanzania that I participated with. So I've been an active participant in many of these activities, and I continue to be an active member of this community.
That's fantastic. Now I wanted to turn a little bit toward your beginning of your tenure at Seton Hall here. What are your hopes and dreams for the School of Diplomacy? What are your goals coming here?
Well, the first goal is clearly to cherish and celebrate the first 15 years of the school. The school itself is already a success story. It's a wonderful story of how a university like Seton Hall can take the lead in a difficult field as diplomacy and international relations to experiment with a new possibility of an academic program. So that there is an appreciation of the past. I think it's very important for me, and it's important for everyone who has been associated with the school, alumni, donors, faculties, current students, and so on. But as soon as we realize that the school is truly an asset, we really need to see where are we going. And the way I see the school becoming is more and more a good school for the good of all. A good school where students learn, where teachers teach, and administrators administer, but where everybody is in a way contributing to the greater good of humanity as a whole. And I think that this positioning of the school will become clearer and clearer as we see the school evolving institutionally. We will have at least 2 new centers very soon, one on UN and global governance, and the other one on peace and conflict studies. And these are just 2 of the emerging clusters that the faculty identified as strength of the school. The third one is global health that has been already identified as a center, and there may be 2 more, one on emerging powers, emerging trends, and on new political economy. But this transformation of the school institution with the creation of the centers and so on is made possible because we are 15 years old, because we do have a wonderful student body, and because we have an engaged community of alumni and supporters that are in a way engaged. I think that what you will see is also a renewed effort to be present in Washington. We will teach courses starting spring 2014, and there is clearly a synergy there, in having the school branching out from Seton Hall to Washington and New York. And then you will see, obviously, the school taking seriously the challenge of an online presence, not only social media, not only being present where people already are, but also being present through online education and offering courses. So what I see is a school that becomes more aware of itself and more generous in its presence in the world.
Those sound like very exciting plans, catching up to the times. I know something that drew me and a lot of other students to the school was the association with the UN and the United Nations Association of the U.S. How is that association going to strengthen going forward? I know that was one of your goals that you just mentioned a center of.
Yeah, that's one way in which we are going to take stock, acknowledge, and grow even further this association with the UN. I already met with the United Nations Foundation that has been part of the school DNA and the United Nations Association program. We have planned to have the students participating in the membership there, and we do have specific programs at the UN headquarters and around the world to strengthen this connection. I think that indeed for the school is paramount to be connected with the UN system as a whole. And the proximity to New York is one way, but there is also a UN presence in a number of countries, in a number of regions, and I think that you will see more and more connectivity between Seton Hall School of Diplomacy and those present.
Wonderful. It is so fortunate to be so close to the global headquarters.
Yep, very true.
Yes.
And especially these days when the General Assembly is on. I'm literally going tonight, and it's really a lively moment of the year.
Very true. Do you have any big predictions for the General Assembly this year? Looking forward to any decisions that might be voted on?
Well, I'm definitely interested in genocide prevention and responsibility to protect. I'm very eager to see if the consensus that was created in 2005, could be renewed. The document in July is definitely a good one. But personally, we have a wonderful moment to look forward. That is the gala that we have on UN Day on October 24th, when we will honor Bill McSweeney. And the whole community of Seton Hall will come together around the UN, with the UN, in the UN spirit. And I think that it will be a wonderful opportunity for all of us to be there.
I know everyone is very much looking forward to it. Now, finally, one last question. Is there any secret or something the student body might not guess about you that you would like to share with us? Maybe your favorite meal or some other hobby that we would be surprised to know about?
Well, you may be surprised that I like swimming, that I was a competitive swimmer when I was young, and I do like the intensity of a competition that is more against yourself than anybody else. And I think that there is something there that stayed with me since my early age when I was swimming and swimming fast. I think that I like to work in an environment in which excellence is not only possible but is built up with this intense training. And I believe that students, and particularly the students of diplomacy that I met, are definitely of high quality and will benefit from an environment in which we can be as demanding and rigorous as we need it to be. Absolutely. Those are good qualities to serve you in all of life. So I'm delighted that we could do this, and we'll definitely continue. Okay. Thank you so much, Dean Bartoli, for joining us on The Global Current. All the best. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's show of The Global Current. Check us out at blogs.shu.edu/globalcurrent and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. This has been Alicia Sharabali, and we'll see you next week.